The station wagon stopped in front of us, and there was a short bark from the horn. Associate Professor Izaki came out from the driver's side. While I was eating with Dr. Luskin and Maho, he'd called me about something else. When I told him I was having dinner with the two of them, he'd offered to drive us home. Dr. Luskin had tried to refuse, but Izaki had insisted so much that he had no choice but to accept. He had a pretty nice car for an associate professor. This was the cause of a lot of speculation around the college. Some people said his family was rich, and others that he had the wife of some CEO as a patron. That's really not that much of an expensive car, if we're being honest. Like, I don't think someone's gonna look at you and be like, "Yo, you got like a station wagon / hatchback. You are rich, dog." Like, no, that's not really gonna be the case. He'd once quietly told me the truth, that he was single and spent all his money on his car. But who even knew if that was true? Izaki was acting like he was a professional chauffeur and opening the rear door and escorting Dr. Luskin and Maho. Dr. Luskin thanked him and got inside. Maho went around to the back to load up her luggage. He grinned and poked me with his elbow. Poke. He was a hard guy to hate, but for an associate professor, he seemed kind of shallow. It was one of the unfortunate things about him. He waved to me and opened the driver's side door. What was that sound? About the same time I heard the strange sound, a hole appeared in the window on the front passenger side. Izaki screamed and fell back on his butt. The rear window exploded. We're getting sniped by someone with a silenced weapon. I panic. Was this some kind of supernatural phenomenon? I was too confused to move. And in the corner of my vision, I saw someone. I didn't know appeared out of the shadow of one of the pillars. You could have put a silencer on that gun there, considering that gun was totally silenced. He was holding something strange in his hand. It looked kind of like a handgun. It was tiny with a short barrel and kind of flat. I couldn't see any kind of silencer. I remembered him from somewhere. I felt like we'd met before. Where? I thought, but nothing came to me immediately. The man was standing there mumbling something to himself. Yo, dog, what the fuck you talking about? There was an aura of intensity and madness about the man as he pointed his gun at us again. Izaki stood up, turned around, and fled in terror like a startled rabbit. Probably not the worst idea. That sound again. It was so soft and light. I couldn't even imagine that it was a gunshot. But this time the car windows didn't break. And didn't blow a hole in me either. It missed? Was he too focused on Izaki? But you won't be that lucky again. Move! Maho was very frightened. I pushed Maho into the back seat and crawled into the driver's side. Thankfully, the engine was still running. I slammed down the pedal without even bothering to shut the door. The sound of a powerful engine shook the underground air. The attacker flinched at the incredible noise and vibration. But the car didn't move forward. It's not in gear, dummy. It didn't move an inch. Just revving the engine there. Dr. Luskin and Maho were keeping their heads low in the back seat and shouting loud enough to be heard over the engine. I took my foot off the accelerator. I glanced over at the gear shift. It was stuck next to the N for neutral. Put it in the D. Wait. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And in through the windshield, I saw the attacker ready his gun again. He was aiming at me. The look in his eyes told me he was ready to kill without hesitation. Crap! Cracks like a spiderweb appeared in the windshield. Something went past the side of my head. I felt a sharp pain, and at the same time a ringing in my ears. And all the other sounds faded away and started to disappear. I felt myself passing out. And then Maho jumped over the seat and slid into the passenger side. My mind was pulled back to reality. I slammed the door shut just as she told me. Maho shifted from neutral to drive and leaned over on top of me to grab the wheel. Peel out. I slammed the accelerator so hard that for a moment the wheels were almost spinning in place. That will do it. Then the car leapt forward. The attacker was getting close. We were going to hit him. I was about to take my foot off the accelerator when Maho shouted. I gritted my teeth and did as she said. But there was no impact. Evidently, the attacker had leapt away at the last second to avoid being crushed. But there was no time to confirm it as the car raced through the parking garage. We were going too fast, and since Maho was controlling the car from the passenger seat, she couldn't keep it going in a straight line. That's one way to show a car moving. The car spun to the left and the right, and I was almost flung out the broken window. I grabbed onto the edge of the seat as hard as I could. We headed for the exit, slamming into walls and pillars as we went. I could see an exit sign right in front of us. I pressed the brake and put my hand on top of Maho's, turning the wheel to the right. But that was the wrong thing to do. The rear tires slipped. The car spun in a circle. And then it came to a stop. I looked back and saw Dr. Luskin lying face up on the seat, giving me a thumbs up sign. I quickly put my hand on the door and got ready to get out of the driver's seat. But then I saw an old creaky sedan rumbling towards us and shivered. It was the man from a moment ago. He was following us and moving really fast. Had it broken when we'd slammed to the wall? I grabbed Maho out of the passenger seat and rolled outside. Dr. Luskin rolled out of the rear door. It was less than a second afterward that the sedan hit. If we'd been even just a little too slow, we would have been turned into mincemeat. I stood up and offered Maho a hand, then moved away from the unrecognizable wreck that used to be a car. Jesus. Both cars were smashed together. The attacker's sedan was completely embedded in the rear half of the car we'd been driving. There was no way he could have survived. There were no tire marks on the ground, which meant he slammed into us without braking. I shivered. I'd almost been killed. I was about to pull out my smartphone when the security guards heard the commotion and came running. The security guard nodded and contacted the police. There goes your adrenaline rush. I could feel a pulsing ache on the side of my head. A shot from the gun had grazed me. I hadn't felt that pain at all while I was driving. I fearfully reached up to the temple to touch it and felt blood flowing from my temple down my face. I gulped when I saw that my fingertips had turned bright red. I almost saw Mayuri when she was shot in the head. I almost saw Kirisu when I'd killed her. The images felt like they were about to come flashing back to me, and I struggled to stay standing. Maho went pale.
ここってまずい場所だったりするのか。
そこには線側頭動脈っていうのがあって。
見せてごらん。少し触るよ。
That's a weird way to say it. Dr. Leskinen looked at the wound. When he touched me, I felt more pain, but I gritted my teeth to endure it.
傷はそんなに深くない。
You just got grazed. You're okay.
これをお使いなさい。すみません。
I put the handkerchief he offered me up to my temple.
襲ってきた人、セミナーにいた人だわ。
本当か？
覚えてない？あなたが異議を出した相手よ。
Well, that's right. It sounded like he was insulting Kirisu, so I shouted objection at him. That was the guy. Was this his way of getting back at me? Not a chance.
神の与えし魂とは神の子である我々にこそ宿る。決してシリコンの上には宿らない。
何？
銃を撃つ前に言ってたんだ。
アマデウスのことかしら。
さあ。
I could faintly hear police car sirens in the distance. The hotel security guards and staff were starting to gather.
なあ、この状況どう説明したらいいんだ。
ありのまま言うしかないわ。私たちだって何が何だか。
And then Maho's eyes went wide. She, Dr. Leskinen, and the crowd were all staring at a single point. I looked too, and almost screamed.
つまずきを与えるよがもたらすものが忌まわしい。
The man crawled out from the wreckage of the sedan, covered in blood. And then he staggered to his feet. He looked like a zombie. All his limbs except the one holding the gun were pointed off in impossible directions, and I could see what looked like bones sticking out from them. His stomach was torn open, and each time he crawled forward, I could see major organs, covered in blood, falling out of the hole. Ugh. But he moved towards us, as if he felt no pain at all. It was such an awful sight that no one could speak. Gross. The man unsteadily aimed the gun towards Dr. Leskinen. He must have been on the verge of death because his arm was flailing around too much to aim, but Dr. Leskinen's expression was pure terror, and he seemed unable to move. A shot rang out. Fresh blood flew out of the man's head, and his body was blown away as if it had been hit by a truck. He fell to the ground, still clutching his gun. He tried to crawl forward anyway, but soon twitched and stopped moving. The crowd began to scream. The attacker had been shot? Did he shoot himself? No, that gunshot was clearly different from the last ones. Who had just fired? I looked around. I could see several policemen coming from the entrance, but none of them had their guns drawn. And the crowd was nothing but security and hotel staff. I couldn't see any of them carrying a gun. So who had fired? And where had they fired from? And the way they took the attacker's head off with a single shot. Not just anyone could do that. Of course, no one told me. Afterward, the police took us into custody. We were taken to the police station and questioned until late into the night. The sun was about to rise by the time we left. The police took me home in a patrol car. Dr. Leskinen and Maho were having the police take them back to their hotel in Wako, so we split up in front of the police station. We never did find out why the man had attacked us. You gotta hate when that happens. Suzuha! She felt dizzy. That's strange, Suzuha thought. She stopped moving. As she was in the middle of the sidewalk, the other pedestrians looked irritated as they moved around her.